There was once a national football team that proudly carried their country's flag onto the field. They played in front of thousands of fans, smiling, celebrating, and representing their nation with pride. But when the match ended, those smiles often disappeared. After games, a bus would arrive to pick up the players. But it wasn't always taking them home. Instead, some players were reportedly taken to an older facility where harsh disciplinary measures awaited them. Former players later described punishments that made it difficult to walk, physically exhausting treatment sessions, and humiliating experiences designed to send a message. Some claimed they were forced through rough training conditions, while others described degrading treatment that went far beyond what anyone would consider normal coaching. This isn't a movie, this is a real story, and behind it all was one name, a name that, according to many former Iraqi players, brought fear throughout Iraqi football. For years, the outside world knew almost nothing about it. Even major football organizations had little public knowledge of what was happening behind closed doors. Commentators didn't talk about it. International fans didn't hear about it. Then, after 2003, everything changed. When one of Iraq's most powerful figures disappeared from the country's political landscape, former players finally began to speak. And what they shared with organizations such as the BBC, The Guardian, and Human Rights Watch shocked the football world. That man was Uday Hussein, the eldest son of Iraqi leader Saddam Hussein. In 1984, Uday Hussein became president of the Iraq Olympic Committee. Soon afterward, he gained significant influence over Iraqi football as well. At first, many people saw nothing unusual about it. The son of a powerful leader becoming involved in sports administration didn't seem particularly surprising. But that assumption turned out to be very different from reality. For Uday, sports were not simply a hobby. According to numerous reports and testimonies, sports became another arena where power and control could be demonstrated. And before many players fully understood what was happening, an entirely different game had already begun behind the scenes. One with unwritten rules that nobody dared challenge. The Iraq Olympic Committee headquarters in Baghdad looked like an ordinary sports administration building from the outside. But according to multiple former players who later shared their experiences, parts of the complex were associated with disciplinary practices that players feared. Many referred to these sessions simply as training, because few people felt comfortable calling them anything else. What really happened inside, the world would have to wait for a war before those stories finally emerged. A question naturally follows. If conditions were so difficult, why didn't the players simply leave the country or speak out? The answer was not just fear, it was an entire system. During Saddam Hussein's rule, Iraq's intelligence and security networks maintained extensive oversight across society. Human rights reports from that period documented concerns that speaking against the government could bring consequences not only for individuals but sometimes for their families as well. Football players were part of that reality. For many of them, remaining silent wasn't simply the easiest choice, it felt like the only choice. Then came 2003. After the collapse of Saddam Hussein's government, former Iraqi footballers gradually began sharing their experiences with international media. According to reports published by the BBC, The Guardian, and Human Rights Watch, players described severe punishments following disappointing performances or important losses. Some spoke about painful physical discipline, others described humiliating treatment intended to intimidate and discourage failure. Listening to these accounts raises an important question. How could all of this happen under the label of training? Most coaches respond to defeat by saying, "Let's improve next time." But according to interviews given by former players, Uday Hussein often viewed defeat differently. To him, a loss was reportedly seen as a personal embarrassment rather than simply part of the game. As a result, many players entered matches carrying a burden far heavier than normal competitive pressure. For them, losing wasn't just disappointing, it was something they deeply feared. That created a psychological weight that lasted far beyond 90 minutes on the pitch. Then, in March 2003, the United States launched its invasion of Iraq. Within weeks, Saddam Hussein's government collapsed. On July 22, 2003, Uday Hussein and his brother Qusay Hussein were killed during a confrontation with US forces in Mosul. The event was widely reported by major international news organizations. Afterward, something remarkable happened inside Iraqi football. Players who had spent years remaining silent finally began to speak openly. Former Iraq national team captain Sharar Haidar Mohammed and other players shared their experiences with international media. They described the atmosphere of fear that surrounded the team and explained how disciplinary measures affected players after poor results. As these testimonies became public, organizations such as FIFA and the International Olympic Committee began responding to the allegations. But another question remained: did nobody know earlier? The truth appears to be complicated. Some warning signs had surfaced over the years. However, the political climate and fear surrounding the regime made large-scale investigations extremely difficult. Only after Uday Hussein's death did many players feel safe enough to tell their stories, and although their words varied, their message was often the same. We played football, but in the back of our minds, we were always worried about what would happen if we lost. Today, Iraq's national football team competes like any other team in the world. They win, they lose, they recover, and move forward. But for one generation of players, that normal reality was itself a victory. Because there was a time when the greatest challenge facing Iraqi football wasn't the opposing team on the field, it was the system surrounding the sport itself. And the people who lived through that era are still here today, reminding the world of a chapter in football history that many had never imagined.